Yes, I have sold my U.S. stocks, um, and fortunately or unfortunately, fewer and fewer stocks are going up now, which is usually the sign at the end of a bull market that the number of advancing issues get smaller and smaller, and that's happening now, which to me confirms that we're getting close to the end.
You're watching Capital Cause, and my name is Danny, and today's guest is the legendary Jim Rogers, fan favorite of the channel. Jim, thank you so much for coming on the show again.
Danny, I am delighted to be here as always.
Yeah, let's just dive right in, Jim. What is most topical for you right now? What is front and center for you on your radar screen?
Well, I'm worried about the end of the world. You look back at history, and whenever you start having a few small wars, they keep getting more and more small wars. And the next thing you know, we've got a big war. And I see several small wars out there. And I mean, I'm not suggesting it's going to happen ever, if it is, but I am worried because I see a lot of small wars.
But Jim, don't you know? I mean, Trump is coming in and cleaning up shop. I mean, we're going to end the Ukraine war in 24 hours, and the Gaza war has already been ended with that ceasefire deal. So what wars are you alluding to?
You just named it. All of those, all of the
Yeah.
above. And I know Mr. Trump, and he really, says he's determined. He seems to be determined. He seems to be determined to have a place in history, and that would give him a place in history. But I know Mr. Trump is also somewhat emotional or scattered at times. And so who knows what might happen? It would be terrific if he can end the wars and they don't come back.
Do you think he has a good chance of ending them? Let's start off with Ukraine. Let's start off with Ukraine and Russia. He did have a good deal of things to say about Putin, namely that a couple of weeks back, right after he got inaugurated, he did say, "Putin, come to the negotiation table, make a deal, or else we don't want to hurt you. We don't want to apply more sanctions." Putin kind of shrugged it off, and he kind of played to his ego there. So, what do you make of his back and forth there with Putin and Russia? It seems like they said they were going to look towards settling on a deal sometime next week.
They both are saying the right things. They both seem to be doing the right things. Ask me next week. We will see, Danny. Talk is cheap, and it always has been. And unfortunately, when these small wars start, they sometimes are very hard to end. Yes, I hope we can end it. Mr. Putin seems to want to end it. Mr. Trump says he wants to end it. So you and I want to end it. The markets want to end it. Markets are going up because they want it to end. I hope.
Yeah, we'll see. Indeed, his presidency has upset many of the European leaders, though, namely Macron, namely the UK, by way of Keir Starmer. What do you make of his relationship with Europe in this regard? Because Europe still seems like they want to go to war with Russia. So how do you square that circle?
Well, Mr. Trump has had difficult relations with many people in his history. Uh, I know it can be done. Somebody will have to give up something, but it seems that enough people want to give up something to get this peace that it could happen. But Danny, oh my gosh, we're talking about history. We're talking about egos. We're talking about emotions. And unfortunately, when people start slapping each other, it's sometimes difficult to stop, whoever is doing the slapping.
The the French, by way of Macron, did say that they were thinking of putting in troops into Greenland should Trump decide to create some sort of acquisition, of Greenland. What's there to make of this? Is there teeth? Is there are there fangs to this fox here, or is this just simply bluster on the part of Europe not wanting to lose Greenland's, I guess, rare earth minerals that come with it?
That's how these things get bigger and bigger. Somebody has some bluster, then somebody else has some old bluster. And then we have another bluster. And the next thing you know, people are saying, my God, how did we get into this stupid war? But here we are. I don't see any reason that Denmark should give up Greenland. I don't see any reason that America should have it. But who cares what I think? Because you get enough emotions and egos
Mm.
involved, and people start doing it. I mean, for many people, it came out of the blue when Trump said, we deserve to own Greenland." I mean, most Americans couldn't find Greenland on a map, much less know why we should have it. But here we are. And yes, I hope it doesn't happen. I hope that Greenland sits there as part of whatever it wants to be. And I hope we stay out of it. But Danny, who cares what I think? You have to get Mr. Trump and his emotions under control.
Well, what's your best guess as to why they want Greenland so bad? Is it the North Sea Passage to compete with Russia and the North Pole? Is it because of the rare earth minerals that are over there in Greenland? What's the rationale behind this?
But all of the above is the rationale. But the real rationale is Mr. Trump thinks it will give him a place in history if he brings Greenland to the United States. I repeat, I doubt that most Americans even know what Greenland is or where it is, and they don't care. But Mr. Trump cares, and Mr. Trump thinks it will ensure his place in history.
Right. And earlier this week, you did have this duel between the U.S. and Canada and the U.S. and Mexico. Seems to have settled now. The tariffs that were proposed have been frozen for at least 30 days now. Who really came out ahead in this? It seems like we're getting 10,000 troops on the borders of Mexico to ensure that there isn't any migration of an illegal nature. And then in terms of Canada, I believe this agreement was already sown even before Trump came into office. So this is an agreement that was already in place, I guess. I guess they're just now enforcing it. Uh, what's your view on what we saw earlier this week when it came to the short-lived tariff wars between the U.S. and Canada, and the U.S. and Mexico?
Well, I'm certainly not in favor of illegal anything, including illegal immigration. I hope that somebody can stop it. The Canadians know it, the Mexicans know it, and the Americans know it. So I hope we can stop it. It'll be good for a while if they can stop it. The problem is a lot of people want to come to the US legally or illegally. That's the main problem. And I don't know how you solve that problem. And that is the real problem. I mean, do you want to be rich in the United States or do you want to be poor in Mexico? Most people would say, I'll be rich anywhere. I don't want to be poor anywhere. And that's our problem.
Yeah, and then on top of that, these deportations haven't really been picking up steam like a lot of people thought they would. I think they're deporting at somewhere around the rate of 700 people, 700 illegal aliens a day, and if you do the math, that's about a quarter million a year. So clearly, that that's nowhere near enough to undo some of the illegal immigration under Biden. And I believe it's actually the amount is actually less than Biden. I think Biden was actually deporting more people than what's being deported now. So the immigration policy stuff doesn't seem to be going according to plan.
Well, you just said, explain the whole problem. I don't have a solution except make everybody rich, including you and me, you know. But you and I are already Americans, so we don't have the problem. I don't know how you give everybody enough prosperity that they stay home. That is the basic problem.
Mm.
Yes, If we deport everybody, that will set an example and that might do it. But it's a serious problem. It's been going on for a long, long time, many years. It didn't start yesterday. And we either have to open our borders to more immigrants or we have to throw them out. And so far, nobody wants to open the borders. I would, but who cares what I would? Because most Americans do not want a lot of illegal immigrants. By the way, Danny, all of us are immigrants. Nearly everybody in America is an immigrant or a descendant of an immigrant. But that's not what we think about at times like this.
Yeah, and you mentioned the immigration into the United States and the economic, I guess, inflation that comes with it. But what do you see when you look at a world population that's looks like it's going to hit a high of 9 billion people, and then if you look at the fertility rates of pretty much anywhere in the globe, it's all going down. People are having less kids, and it's homogeneously spread, right? There's not a single region on Earth where this trend isn't occurring. How can you have higher and higher economic growth, assuming we have the same economic growth model that we've had for the last 100 years or so, with a declining population?
Well, it can happen. It's difficult. I mean, you can add and subtract, obviously, and it's good that you can add and subtract. But many people apparently cannot add and subtract. And whether we like it or not, we have to have somebody to do the work. We have to have somebody to do the work and do the consumption. But when it comes to push comes to shove, nobody wants foreigners.
Mm.
Even though we're all foreigners, and even though all of our ancestors were foreigners, when it comes to us, we don't like them. I mean, Danny, I'm sure I've heard many people say, yes, you're right. I'm an immigrant. My parents were immigrants, but we were different. It was different when my parents came here. It was different when I came here. Everybody says that, and they've said it for hundreds of years.
Do you think they don't want foreigners, or do you think that they just don't want them coming in here illegally? Because there's a distinction that Trump likes to make, that we want them here legally. That's what he'll say.
Well, of course, everybody wants everything to be legal, but the question is, how do you do it? Yes, we let them all come legally, and they could, but somebody has to enforce that, and somebody has to make it happen. And that takes a lot of people, a lot of work, a lot of American workers. I would love to see it. I would love to see lots more legal immigrants into the U.S. It would be good for the U.S. It always has been. Danny, as you know, everybody knows the United States is a nation of immigrants. If it hadn't been for immigration, we would be nothing. But it also, historically, for the last couple of 100 years, everybody was anti the immigrants. You know, the English were anti the Irish when they came. And then everybody was anti the Italians when they came. And then there was a whole period when, oh my God, not more Germans. We don't want more Germans. You know, this goes on and on and on for, even though we're all immigrants and are descended from immigrants, we get emotions stirred up. I repeat, I would let them in, but nobody cares because other people would not let them in. But it doesn't happen just in the U.S., it happens everywhere in the world.
Yeah, and I guess as times get tougher, as the economy gets worse, you tend to see these kind of sentiments arise, right?
Of course, then it makes it even worse. People say, see, we told you, it's because of those foreigners. It's because of those immigrants.
What do you make of this recent reprioritization in foreign policy from Trump? It seems like he's trying to get away from the wars over there in the East, like in Ukraine and Europe and in the Middle East. And his prioritization seems to have gone from west to east to north to south, meaning Canada, Mexico, Greenland, Panama Canal. What do you what is the what do you think he's trying to do with this approach?
Well, he's trying to stir up emotions. He's trying to stir up political support. I mean, if he comes and says, look, we are all American, America's the greatest country in the world, and everybody should be American, including Canadians and Mexicans, most people will say, you're right, we are the greatest country in the world. And those poor people are lucky that we will take them in. And that gets the emotions stirred up. And then, of course, the Canadians say, wait a minute, we don't want you to tell us what to do. And their emotions get stirred up. And then it doesn't get better, it gets worse. When
Do
people
you see
start
him
running
using
their countries based on emotions instead of facts, it's usually not so good.
you don't see him as potentially kind of setting up like this fortress America in the Western Hemisphere?
Well, fine, okay, if you can somehow stop all the illegal immigrants, that would certainly reduce the problem and maybe even solve the problem. Can it work? It never has. I mean, as I say, if you go back and look at American history, in the 1840s, they were shrieking about the Irish. They were shrieking about the foreigners coming to the US. In the 1870s, they were shrieking about the Germans. No more Germans, no more Italians. We've always had this situation because America has been a place where people wanted to be. And if people want to be somewhere, they usually figure out a way to go. I repeat, maybe if we just let them all in, we wouldn't have a problem. In the 19th century, they all came. We didn't even try to stop them. We complained, but Washington didn't do much to try to stop them. So we had a lot of immigrants and we had great prosperity. But there was an act in 1872, 1882, I guess, saying no more Chinese. There was the Chinese Exclusion Act or something like that, where this law specifically said no more Chinese can come to America. Now, when the Second World War came, they abolished that act and said, oh, we need more Chinese to fight the Japanese. So these things have come and gone throughout history. And unfortunately, all of us, not just Americans, everybody gets emotional. And that leads to the problems.
Could we be seeing a
Let me just,
revival?
maybe I
Go
didn't
ahead.
make it clear. There was an act, literally an act passed in Washington saying, no more Chinese can come to America. And then when we needed them, there was an act specifically passed that, please, we need more Chinese. Come, we welcome you.
Yeah, they were the help at that point.
Yes, of course, we needed them badly. Whether it was for a laundry or for a gun, we needed them.
Yeah. Do you see this as a revival of the old North American Union idea from, the Bush years, and I believe the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations, also wrote about this a while, back in the old days. Is he trying to pull up that old strategy to unify North America in that way?
Well, I mean, on paper, it's a great idea. Sure, it's a fabulous idea, but that's on paper. Then when you look out the window and you see people you don't know and don't like, you don't like them because you don't know them, then it's not such a good idea.
Hmm. What do you make of his recent remarks about the U.S. occupying Gaza? Is that something the U.S. can actually afford to do, given that, Hamas is still there in Gaza. They have their tunnel system and everything. The Israeli military has been trying to get them out for over a year now to no avail. Sure, the entire place is blown up to smithereens, but you know the military arm, the Hamas arm is still there.
Well, I mean, anything that can bring peace and prosperity is a good idea on paper, but you've just explained the problem. paper is different from human beings because you can tell human beings, okay, let's all be friends. Let's all get rich together. And everybody says, yes, let's do it. But then when you start looking out the window and you see these strangers that you don't know, you don't like them. And if things go wrong, you think it's because of the foreigners. I mean, this is human beings for thousands of years. If you don't like them, if you're having problems, whenever a country has problems, the first thing the politicians is blame the foreigners. They always blame the foreigners first, whoever the country is, not just the United States, everybody does it. Because it's easy to blame the foreigners. Now, if and when we could all sit around and drink coffee together or drink beer together, we like the foreigners. But until that happens, and that's hard to get, everybody blames the foreigners for the problems.
Yeah, but how realistic is it to presume that the United States can successfully occupy a place like Gaza, though?
If you ask me, it's an absurd. Look at a map. You see what Gaza is, you see where the US is, et cetera, et cetera. Of course, we can send thousands of troops and guns and airplanes. It costs us a fortune, kills a lot of us, and it probably will not work in the end. But that doesn't mean they won't try it, because the people will say, oh, we're the best in the world. And everybody will say, yes, we're the best in the world, so let's do it. But the problem is, it's not easy, especially with Gaza, which is thousands of miles away.
Yeah, yeah. I personally don't know how how they're even going to try to attempt something like this, especially with Egypt and Jordan both saying that there's no way Egypt and Jordan can take in, the Palestinians in Gaza. They would risk civil wars within their own borders. So I mean, there would be problems within that they'd have to deal with internally. So let's go ahead and shift over to the
Wait,
market.
Dan,
Unless
that's
you want to
you
say
have
something. Yeah, go ahead.
you have good logical observations. That's the problem. They're logical and good. That's why people think they can do something else.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and shift over to the markets. You don't have, last time we spoke, I believe you said that you've sold off all of your US stocks. Is that still the case? Are you still completely out of the US?
Yes, I have sold my US stocks. Um, and fortunately or unfortunately, fewer and fewer stocks are going up now, which is usually the sign at the end of a bull market that the number of advancing issues gets smaller and smaller. And that's happening now, which to me confirms that we're getting close to the end. But I'm certainly the worst market timer in the world, Danny. So don't ask me. We should watch you. You tell us what's happening.
Well, I get all my information from people like yourself, Jim. So it's kind of like a recursive circle, so to speak.
Well, I know I'm the worst market timer in the world, so don't listen to me.
Oh, well, I'm the second. I'm the second worst in the world then. Well, hey, what do you make of the recent precious metals price? Gold has been moving up, presumably at this news that the LBMA is getting cleared out. Deliveries are taking 4 to 8 weeks to happen, when they took less than 4 days to happen before. All sorts of chicanery seems to be reported out of London. Do you see any weight behind these stories?
I own gold, I own silver. I will probably buy more silver soon. Uh, I've heard these kind of stories before. I've been investing in precious metals for decades, and every time we get a good rally going, these stories recur, whether it's Chicago or London, wherever it is. The same stories recur that you cannot get delivery or delivery is delayed, whatever. I have no idea if the stories are accurate or not, but I know I've heard them before. I also know I own gold and silver, and I will be buying more silver before too long, probably. Not gold. Gold is at an all-time high,
Hmm.
Silver is down nearly 40 or 50% from its all-time high. So I would buy more gold instead of, I mean, more silver instead of gold.
I see. Yeah, I think you said that during the last time we spoke. And if you don't mind, Jim, I'd like to give my audience a little heads up. If you guys are interested in asymmetric trades and really upping your investing game, really learning from experts who taught me the game, so to speak, check out my good friends over at Capitalist Exploits, led by Chris McIntosh and Brad McFadden. Had him on a number of times. You can always check out those interviews in the archives here on this YouTube channel. But for viewers of this channel, you can save $1,000 on your annual subscription. It's a deal you can't get anywhere else. And again, you're going to get an education and you're going to get their asymmetric stock picks that I highly recommend that you consider. And so, with all that said, check out the link down below if you're interested. Jim, let's go ahead and segue over to some of the other commodities in the market. Energy. What's your view on energy right now?
Well, energy is down from its all-time high, down fairly substantially. So yes, I would rather buy it than sell it. It's not booming. You know when energy's booming. Gosh, we all know. We go to the gas station if nothing else. So energy, yes, is a place that one should examine and explore, buying more of. Most commodities are down fairly substantially from their all-time highs. So I had rather be investing in real assets like commodities rather than US stocks. US stocks are going through the roof, commodities aren't. And we will have more money printing when there are problems in the economy. Central banks will print more money and they will say it's good for us, but it will be mainly good for commodities. You'll see the price of real assets going. They always have. I mean, Danny, you know as well as I do, whenever there's a problem, they print money and the price of things go higher. Real assets go higher.
Interesting. So, commodities tend to, portend to inflation or stagflation in this case. Do you see a capital rotation event going from, I guess, the broad market, from growth stocks into commodities? Do we see capital going from that sector into the commodity sector? And then what does that mean for life in general to see these commodity prices rise? What does that mean for the average American, the average, world citizen, let's say?
First of all, your spouse is going to start complaining about the prices going higher, whether it's for gasoline or for sugar, whatever it is.
Hmm.
Everybody's going to be complaining. Cost of living is going to go higher. It's going to get harder to stay solvent. Everybody's going to plane to the government. The government's going to try to solve the problem, and we'll have more problems. Danny, America has had the longest period in our history without a stock market problem, without an economic problem since 2009.
Hmm.
Never lasted this long in our history. Now, maybe it's going to last forever. Maybe Washington has solved all of our problems. Maybe we're never going to have problems again. I don't buy it.
Do we also see more wars? Do we enter an environment where war becomes a valid risk? Because as goods get more expensive, as commodities get more expensive, as energy get more expensive, it becomes the
And we
law of the
blame the
jungle.
foreigners. When problems like that start happening, politicians blame the foreigners. And when you start blaming the foreigners, maybe you start trade wars, but eventually some of those trade wars turn into shooting wars, real wars. I mean, this has been going on for a few thousand years, Danny. You and I are not the first to notice what's happening, and it's happened before. Do I
Yeah.
like it? No. Do I approve? No. But that's human beings.
Trump's recent comments about lowering the interest rate and as well as the 10-year yield. Are we getting close to yield curve control? It sounds like. And if so, what is the significance of yield curve control? What does that mean for an investor?
we have had many times in history and anywhere in the world where they try to control the yield curve. Yes, yield curve is important, and everybody knows that. Even I know it. So if I know it, everybody knows it. And they will try to control the yield curve. They will try to adjust yields as they see fit. There will be the attempt, and some of it will be successful. But usually that involves money printing or some kind of money control, and that usually leads to inflation.
Mm.
In my view, the market is smarter than all of us and all of them, but that's not the way Washington sees our politicians see it. Washington thinks they're smarter than everybody else.
I
I know
see.
the market is smarter than all of us. They don't see it that way.
Understood. Well, hey, Jim, fascinating interview as always. Anything else you want to talk about and bring up before we wrap things up?
Well, I just want to say again, be careful. I know that we've had the longest period in our history without a problem in the stock market. And I would be very, very happy if it's going to last forever.
Hmm.
But I know it never has. And I don't like it. And I know that when things start going wrong, first of all, they blame the foreigners, and then they start trying to fix it. And that nearly always leads to worse problems. So I expect, in my view, we will continue to have bear markets. But Danny, in my view, the next bear market is we have is going to be the worst in our lifetime because you remember 2008, we had a serious bear market because of too much debt. My gosh, Danny, since 2009, the debt has skyrocketed, not just in the US. I look at the numbers of the debt numbers, our government debt numbers coming out of Washington, and I'll say to myself, how can they do that? How can they do that? Can't they read? They can read, but they think they can solve the problem by making the problem worse. So I just am afraid the next time we have a problem, it's going to be really bad. So be
Yeah.
worried. Listen to your program. Be prepared. Be prepared. That's the best advice I can give.
Awesome advice, Jim. Thank you so much for coming on here again, my friend. It's always a pleasure having you on. And if you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to give us a like and comment "Go Jim Go" in the comment section. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss an episode. And again, check out our good friends over to Capitalist Exploits and save $1,000 on your annual subscription and get an education that's unlike anything else. Link to that is down below. And check us out on Substack, capitalcosm.substack.com. And yeah, Jim, anything you want to plug specifically? I know you have your website, jimrogers.com, but
No,
there's
no,
anything
I
else?
don't have, Danny, I don't have anything to sell. The thing I would emphasize is be careful. Be worried and be careful.
Yep.
Thank you. It's fun as usual
Fun as usual. All right, guys. Thanks so much for
and
watching
educational
and
and
educational.
educational.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye
I'll
bye.
catch you guys
Bye
in the
bye.
next episode. Bye, y'all.
Bye bye.